I've never really heard anyone talking about the actual themes of A Hat in Time, like what it might mean metaphorically and what the game tries to tell you. Now, not every game has that kind of thing. I mean, they might have themes, but not explicitly a metaphor. But I think A Hat in Time does, whether intentionally or not. And now, I don't know exactly how to express this in a way that is quick and also makes sense, and so this video is going to try its best to explain why I think this is, but I believe that A Hat in Time is about the trauma that comes with growing up itself. About that transition where you're technically an adult, but you still need to adjust to it, to whatever past traumas you're dealing with from childhood, or the harsh realities of achieving your dreams, or the societal demands the world has for you, to the world itself. So instead of being super pretentious about it, and talk about like the history of themes or something like that, I think we just jump straight into it, with Chapter 1 of A Hat in Time. You start the game waking up as your ship is on its way home. With 40 timepieces in your pocket, Hat Kid's whole goal is to make it home. The timepieces acting as a fuel source for the ship. However, when one of the members of the Mafia town from the nearby planet somehow manage to fly up to your ship demanding a toll, they ruin everything as all of the fuel from your ship is sucked out, flying everywhere across the planet. Your goal of the game being to recollect all these timepieces by any means possible. Within seconds of the first level, we are quickly acquainted with the self-righteous mustache girl. Following her, we are quickly acquainted with the first members of the Mafia, of whom don't pull any punches and being unlikable. After a while though, Mustache Girl, although standoffish in her dialogue, is far nicer than the adults in the area. She has us come up to the clock tower so we can see where some of our timepieces landed, of which she doesn't seem all that interested in yet, initially calling it junk and not seeming too keen on helping us clean up. Next time around though, we find that Mustache Girl has been captured and is going to be quote-unquote adolescent, likely a beating given the Mafia's MO so far. As such, we swoop in to save her, which causes her to brighten up about us significantly. You see, Mustache Girl wants to destroy the Mafia, and the Mafia has plenty more of our quote-unquote junk, so she convinces us to help her defeat the Mafia to get back our stuff. Upon agreeing to this, we high-five, and meet her even appearing telling us how we are officially friends. She, very clearly emotionally attached to this, and now attached to us, now that she knows we're not a threat, gives us a detailed plan, mostly just on how we'd kill them all. I'll talk more about a lot of this after we're done talking about this chapter as a whole though. She also teaches us about yarn and how we can use it to make more hats to gain more abilities. Next level, we can see more of how the Mafia, and by proxy the only adults in this island, see children, seemingly enjoying their suffering and doing little to help them, while simultaneously expecting them to just accept anything bad happening to them without recourse. Though there's not much else until we begin our plan. It seems like Mustache Girl rushed in without much thought and needs us to save her again, though they seem to scold us about having taken time to get there. The tension quickly melts away as we triumphantly enter together to put our plan into action. Eventually though, we manage to come head to head with the Mafia boss themselves. The Mafia boss refuses to part with your timepiece due to one not having landed for over 100 years, and demanding that you both the old-fashioned way. And yes, Mustache Girl is captured again, and is very impatient about it. But you do eventually defeat the Mafia boss, getting the timepiece. Once you got your friend down though, they pretty carelessly snatch it from you, despite knowing that they're important to you. Carelessly hopping it in the air and insulting you about it while they ask, causing it to shatter, though thanks to the way that timepieces work, it's fine as it rewinds the timeline. Mustache Girl becomes excited about the possibilities despite how visibly uncomfortable we get. Their main focus of course being to rewrite any and every time they've ever been abused by the Mafia. When Hat Kid says no because they want to use them to go home, Mustache Girl becomes enraged, confused, angry, believing that we are selfish for having this power and yet not using it to fight what we think is evil. And if we don't want to fight evil, then we must be evil ourselves. And so she leaves. And also steals half our money, which is like, not cool, man. Before we actually analyze this chapter though, we have one more thing. See, each area can have these purple time rifts, which, when completed, can give you storybooks that tell you a bit about the characters in their given chapter. Now, for the one for this chapter just shows how the Mafia got to Mafia Town. However, the Chapter 5 one tells us about Mustache Girl and her backstory. See, Mustache Girl has lived there happily before the Mafia arrived, and when they did, they quickly took over without the care for the people residing there. Mustache Girl, much like we saw, saw, tried to do everything in their power to claw back the life they had before, but failed every time, forced to live out in a cave, trying their best to fight against the forceful takeover of their world alone. That's likely why it meant so much when she gained a friend, and hurt her so much when we refused to give up our desire to go home so she could have hers again. Anyways, we'll see more of Mustache Girl near the end of the game, though as it stands, there are some clear themes right away. It's all probably gonna sound crazy until we make it to the other chapters that tie all these themes together, but chapter 1 is almost certainly about stewing over the past. As we go through with Mustache Girl, it's very clear that she holds an excessive childhood trauma from Mafia Town and what happened here. And when we arrive, we experience it too, leading to our eventual near-instant pack bond with us. Though that bond only goes so far as our ability to help her and defeat the Mafia, as any time we have wants or needs, they are shot down or made fun of. While simultaneously, she doesn't really do much to help her own goals other than make us do everything, or throwing herself at a problem and then complaining that we didn't as well. I mean, we saved this old guy of whom Mustache Girl herself used to be friends with, but rather than trying to do any real good, she focuses on saying her own desire for vengeance. Despite this though, it's pretty clearly shown that Hat Kid, despite how Mustache Girl is shown to treat her, genuinely believes the two to be friends up until their eventual fight. This being something she could very well hold self-regret for and thinking that there was some way to have remained friends. A regret she'll be forced to face later at the end of the game. Soon after meeting her, Mustache Girl shows us a plan which almost entirely is just describing violent means of killing the Mafia. Asphyxiation, which she claims to be too kind, before pivoting to pummeling them into a jam-like mush of blood and bone, all of which are painted in these childlike drawing styles. It feels extremely similar to those who have suffered from some kind of extreme trauma or abuse, often having these hero fantasies about beating up, or in extreme cases, killing their abusers. Though for most normal, healthy individuals, these thoughts never enter reality. But for Mustache Girl, who's been stewing with all of these emotions and hatred and constant abuse and trauma that's still ongoing, it's built up into more and more of an extreme emotion. In fact, after completing 12 timepieces worth of levels, you will find a strange pink jar with 2 floating eyeballs in it. As it turns out, this is the Mafia boss. Mustache Girl having returned to where you battled to mush their remains into a jar just like they wanted to. Doing this, of course, didn't help with them getting closure at all, nor made them feel any better, so rather than looking inward, they are now forcing their flawed judgment onto the world, soon to become just as tyrannical as the Mafia. Basically, Mustache Girl stews endlessly on the past to the point that they, trying to find justice for themselves, repeats the cycle of abuse as we will later see in more detail, and severing their bond with Hat Kid because if she agreed to give up the timepiece, she'd be forced to look inward at what she wants at life, other than killing the Mafia for what they did to her now that they're defeated. For Hat Kid though, this feels more like they're looking back at an old friendship that turned sour, and that she wishes she could have done more to fix, even if she herself wasn't actually in the wrong. They found themselves in a horrible place, found a friend, and through what Mustache Girl claims is her own selfishness, lost one. When we look back on these kind of things, we have a tendency to look more fondly on them, overlook things, which is why Hat Kid is so accepting of all of these things Mustache Girl did for the most part, and why she's far more willing to blame herself rather than her. Again, I know the idea of this all somehow leading to the idea this is about growing up sounds completely insane, but trust me, it will sound way more believable as we start to analyze Chapter 2, The Battle of the Birds. Oh, by the way, take a shot every time I say trauma in this video. I get a feeling I'm gonna say it a lot. Actually, make that a shot of water. I'd rather you hydrate rather than dihydrate. Okay, Chapter 2. Now, the last chapter had a lot more complicated things to it, so for these next chapters, I'm going to be analyzing them as I'm talking about them, so the runtime doesn't wind up being too intensely long. And luckily, this one's extremely clear-cut, and its themes relate into this theory. Here, the main thing of the entire chapter is that this movie studio ran by 2 directing rivals, the conductor, a popular yet irritable director that makes the same westerns over and over again to satisfy the fans, and DJ Grooves, a far more indie director that makes far more fanatically different movies, usually with extremely artsy themes, dreams, as the two of them fight over the annual Bird War 47, using movie props that are actually your timepieces. In the chapter, you act for both of these directors and ultimately are the decider of who wins the award. There's not a lot in the first chapter, but what we do get right away is this weird aggression towards us right from the get-go. This penguin tells us to beat it, another tells him not to get anywhere near the directors, the express owls seem a bit nicer, though they're clearly just everyday people that are forced to the whims of the conductor. This immediately starts cluing us into the main thing with this chapter. I mean, everybody wants to walk the Hollywood Boulevard, and to be a director is one of those stereotypical dream jobs, but that being said, the people at the top always take advantage of the people who want that fame. We hear about it all the time, and as such, it builds into the only way to make it up, often to be clawing others down, and for the people at the top to be so disillusioned that they don't care about anything but getting their trophies, no matter who got them there. Basically, this chapter is going to be about wanting your dream career and failing, something that we're going to see constantly throughout this chapter. As we hop up into the broken vent, we start seeing a paper of criminal charges, which adds up constantly as though we're constantly being surveyed and under judgment. We also get charged for minor things worded as more extreme charges. By being briefly seen but not caught by a penguin, they get confused for a moment, which gets us charged with penguin harassment, for example. Eventually, though, we get face to face with the director himself, DJ Grooves, of whom also puts on a face of being charismatic only to cut us down. Upon realizing we are a penguin, though, he immediately begins to talk badly about his penguin actors, of whom just earlier that same act were pretty much his ride or die, and want to protect him above all else. In a show of his extreme power, he's able to immediately nullify all charges against us. And although this makes sense with charges that affected him, he also manages to get rid of ones like the penguin harassment too, which should be up to them whether to drop charges. But because of how high up of a director he has practically stranglehold control of anything that happens here. Very similar, again, to real-life Hollywood and high-up companies. They're also able to immediately square you away by near instantly getting you an official legal recognition as a bird. You'd think that changing your entire species would be a legally time-consuming and difficult process, if not expensive feat, but he's able to hook you up near instantly without so much as a judge or an official signing it off. When you move during it, DJ Grooves even tells you to doctor the photo, of which is illegal for a passport like this, and despite how obvious of a botched job we can make it, we never have any sort of problem, all because of the intense power of celebrity stardom, able to take care of anything with the snap of a finger. Or flipper, I guess. With that, he runs off, promising to make us a star by tomorrow. Immediately afterwards, the conductor arrives having been behind the giant award. Despite having likely seen that we hadn't really agreed with anything, given we're mute the whole conversation, he quickly accuses us of fraud, to which we technically are, and becomes upset that his owl guards aren't here to detain us. From there, he also commits a crime by effectively blackmailing us, saying that we have to help him now too, because he can't take us to jail, implying that if we can't, he'll ensure we do go away for a long time. Both of these directors being very clearly complicit and corrupt, especially with their shown legal authority. With that, we head straight into the first of our acting gigs, Murder on the Owl Express. Immediately, he tells us that he hasn't written the script for the movie yet, and thus he's not recording. There's also several shady individuals about, asking for things like your uncle's sister's maiden name and your pet's childhood pet. This is soon after used when you get a mysterious call saying that your uncle's sister, whatever name you typed, has come to visit you, to which you find them, or an obvious cardboard cutout of them, right in front of a dead body. Throughout the level, you collect suspects, and at some point you have to save your pet's childhood pet from earlier. Though by the end, you can pick anyone and they'll admit to being the murderer. Because this is all part of a movie, despite the conductor earlier saying it wasn't, which he did, so your reaction would be more realistic. Not only is this technically illegal in the majority of states, especially given that he explicitly said he wasn't recording, and he actually was, but there's also the fact that the information you gave earlier may not have been publicly available, and because you didn't know it was a movie and thus didn't consent to it, this could also technically be considered doxing, kind of? Though this situation as a whole is pretty shady. I mean, you know those really stupid prank channels that are mostly just a person being an asshole for no reason? Or more specifically, those ones where they traumatize someone for no apparent reason, like pulling a knife or a gun on them in the name of a prank? Yeah, this is literally just that. The conductor is a prank YouTuber just with slightly higher budget and a Grammy nomination. Train Rush is equally terrible behind the scenes, as you must rush through an active train that is actually rigged to blow, which if you fail could kill you and everyone in it. Picture Perfect is less of a movie and more just random ploys to get you into the spotlight as a self-proclaimed diva, mainly with various acts of philanthropy and setting up situations for you to look like the hero in. The big parade parade doesn't have much to mention other than the fact that they're having a child jump across buildings and narrowly avoid lots of pretty dangerous stuff. And with the owl workers having to follow right behind her for the music, they're probably also gonna get a host of medical bills after this. By the end of the act though, depending on who earned the most points during their levels, one will win the awards, being very happy and also narcissistic about it, being very obvious to how little they care about you, claiming that you could maybe get a few dimes off the props he gave you, and shooing you away, saying they never want to see our ugly mug ever again, despite us being the whole reason he won. Exiting out of the level, a phone will ring nearby and tell us that the bird awards were an inside job. They were rigged. Thinking back on it, neither of the directors paid you for any of your work outside of what they themselves believed to be worthless movie props. And you are the star of these movies for these people. How much do you think the owls and penguins are getting? And so we return to the studio to sneak our way underground and uncover the truth, finding various unpaid bills and a storage compound that the HOA would probably have a few words for. Eventually though, you make it to rock bottom where the conductor is waiting for you.
Look who we've got here. I guess you found my little basement, eh? This last timepiece is all mine. If you want it, you're gonna have to take it from me cold, dead hands.
During this fight, the conductor will not only try to crush you, but actively go at you with a knife. This goes on for a while until they have a fake heart-to-heart with you, filled with lots of that celebrity manipulation. I can understand if you feel they belong to you, when they do belong to you, and admitting that they use the timepiece to rig the awards show and plan on going back in time to take the one movie award they lost to DJ Grooves. And when we say no, just like with Mustache Girl, we're told that we are a greedy young girl, further cementing the doubt of before despite us being in the right. And then tying a literal bomb to us and try to murder us, as well as hiring what are basically slasher hitmen. DJ Grooves shoves their way into the crowd to try and save us, figuring out some way to defuse the bomb, managing to a few minutes later with these comically large scissors. And with that, we defeat the conductor and get our timepiece. This is where we can finally get into the meat of my weird theory. You see, I think that A Hat in Time is very strongly suggested to be, at the very least metaphorically, about the transition between adolescence and being an adult. Like that point in time where you're technically an adult, like you're 18 or maybe a little older, but you don't know how to be one yet, and are thrust into all these different responsibilities right out of high school or college, in this period where you see what the world really is, good and bad. With chapter 1, like I said before, I think that chapter is about moving past your regrets from childhood, moving past the good old days that may never come back, and learning to overcome your demons from back when you were a kid and whatever trauma you got back then. Here in chapter 2, we see much more obviously a theme about careers, mainly with how higher-ups will take advantage of you and having to tussle with the idea of possibly failing to achieve your dreams. And with the constant job grind of having to decide between money or mental health because those above you see you as subhuman, to them you're too young to complain or be given any real respect, but too old to be given care or be properly paid, and to be nurtured and genuinely taught whatever role they actually need you in. You're supposed to know all the stuff because you're an adult now, but you're too young to have ever actually been taught it, and so you're being forced to learn in this weird, shitty way. DJ Grooves and the conductor are very obviously powerful elites that can do whatever they want, and despite the workers being the whole reason they can achieve what they want, they still complain about them behind their backs and treat them horribly, not giving them the time of day or decency of a paycheck needed to live. And of course, when one fails, we see both sides of this. The conductor achieves their dreams and DJ Grooves sees theirs fail in real time, determined by their workers but not in a way they can really see thanks to their excessive egos, instead forming a bitter rivalry against each other when if they just treated their people more like people, gave them proper credit and payment, then they'd probably do a better job at it. And reminder, this isn't just the conductor being a bad person and DJ Grooves being a good guy, because if you let DJ Grooves win, the roles switch. DJ Grooves trying to murder you in cold blood so they can cheat at some arbitrary award show, and the conductor trying desperately to save you. It's never been about who's good and who's bad. They are acting one way or the other based based on what suits them. Because if it meant getting that trophy, they'd kill 100 people if they had to, and they'll kill you too. This, in combination with its time theme in general, with you literally trying to get back your time, it seems the story itself is the trauma that comes with such a drastic change in life. Going from not having to worry about anything other than school, to the struggles of your work life, of losing touch with your old friends if you had any, of messed up things from your childhood you never really got over, of taxes, of figuring out what you're supposed to be doing and where you're supposed to go. And this theme only continues with the next chapter. Now, due to the contract theme, you might think this is another chapter based around jobs and the like. And that's what I initially thought with this theory too, but there's a reason that chapter 3, Subcon Forest, is right in the bedroom. Chapter 3 is about societal expectation. Right when you enter and get caught while trying to run off playfully chasing another kid, a noteworthy quote within this intro is here.
Tell you what, hang on a minute. You get to live. That's right. Aren't you lucky?
I'll be tying Snatcher to the idea of family trauma in a moment here, but starting the character of the Snatcher off with a line like this really reminds me of the stereotypical toxic parent excuse, where when a child points out something negative or tries to set a boundary, the parent replies with the fact that they provide the basic necessities needed to live. I feed you, I clothe you, I put a roof over your head, that kind of thing. Snatcher's quote here though is kind of an inverse of this. Usually it's said in real life as, I do these things to keep you alive, therefore I expect you to do this thing for me. But for Snatcher, he says it the other way around. I expect you to do this thing for me, and in return, I will keep you alive. In doing this, he's showing his inherent power dynamic here, and is basically saying the quiet part loud. Without me, you will die. Only with the Snatcher, it's by his hand, not by proxy. The other important connection to toxic family is the whole reason that he's keeping you alive is because they are missing a brain-dead servant. Which in the case of actual toxic parents, there are parents out there who will have a kid solely for the idea that they will simply do whatever they say and take care of them. Pretty much any neglect case is like this. If you look up pretty much any abuse case or really any body cam that involves children, you'll see this kind of dogma firsthand. Either way though, you're forced simply by setting foot here into signing these contracts, which in a way is a metaphor for life itself. By simply being born, you are to obey these sets of rules and standards, which we will see in all of these different contracts you get during the acts. I won't dawdle about every little detail in these acts, so I'm just gonna go through each of their missions on a basic level and relate them to having just become a real adult. The first two are pretty basic: clean the subcon well and clean the toilet of doom. Both of these are just basic chores, of which upon entering that transition period, you're likely to be given some of the more menial tasks that they don't want to do anymore now that you're an actual adult. Mainly done as a means of proving yourself, which also matches up as you need to complete these to get access to more areas and get more contracts. Then we have mail delivery service, which I'm pretty sure is just the basic, you're an adult now, go get yourself a job and make some money. Though unlike with chapter 2, this is just a basic, more menial, everyday job of a mailman. But then we have Queen Vanessa's manor. Vanessa and the Snatcher don't really have a good bond, which I'd honestly say makes the equivalent to him sending you to his ex or sour divorced wife. Either way, he doesn't want to deal with her, and so he just throws you at the problem because you're an adult, get this done for me, you can handle yourself now. Even with the knowledge you will be put in a bad situation, given all of these poor souls that never returned. We also get some insight in his storybook. Continuing with the idea of societal expectation, we see the classic prince and princess who love each other very, very much. However, upon seeing the prince with another woman, assumes the worst, unaware he was just trying to buy her flowers. Refusing to communicate with them, she becomes a monster and has him sealed away to die. The prince becoming the Snatcher, never learning why he was killed, and the princess becoming Queen Vanessa, killing anyone that enters her domain. Not only do we have the typical prince-princess, but it also somewhat lines up with the boomer stereotype of not being good at communicating in the relationships, and generally disliking one another as seen by Queen Vanessa's notes, which show her intense obsession she had with the prince, hating anything the prince chooses to do with their life, out of constant paranoia of him leaving. It's also somewhat implied that the prince may have been forced into being with the princess due to their status, but we don't get much information on how the prince felt about much of anything. Point being, the entirety of the chapter seems to center around expectations, almost like life contracts of the various things you're supposed to achieve within your lifetime. You need to get a job, you need to get a house, you need to get married, get a dog, have some kids, go to college with a high-paying degree as a lawyer or a doctor or something, because these are what life is supposed to be, and because they experienced it, so do you. You just have to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and stop whining about it. Which is where we lead to the end of the chapter. The Snatcher himself is a very obvious stand-in for the deadbeatish father stereotype, down to reading a book in a recliner chair and calling you a kiddo as they talk down to you and make jokes at your expense, all while having you do all the things for them and demanding all of these expectations of you. But eventually there comes the point when they snap about something. The final act is a boss fight against the Snatcher, which is supposed to be rigged against you from the start. Before we even begin though, we have yet another subtle reference to the toxic parroting we were talking about earlier. While talking about the timepieces, they say this.
Besides, you didn't think I was gonna let you keep all these timepieces, did you? They fell in my forest, kid. They belong to me.
Another pretty common thing you hear from parental figures that don't see their kids as people is something along those lines. They'll gift you something with the idea that's yours, but the moment it becomes a nuisance or becomes beneficial to them as a means of emotional hostage, the common excuse is that it's on my property, therefore it's mine. This is often an excuse used with breaking personal boundaries or privacy, such as reading text messages on your phone or checking your browser history. And of course, the Snatcher here is basically saying the same thing. Despite having explicitly given you these timepieces as a reward for completing these contracts, despite the Snatcher not having any reason to need these timepieces in the first place, despite them already having your soul, they won't let you have this tiny thing, which results in the boss battle. Oh yeah, and we can't forget that they take away your hat, leaving you entirely abilityless. One of the attacks the Snatcher uses is this crowd of people, the same kid-sized people that led you here at the start. Though even more obviously with the society theme is this attack, where instead of actually hurting you, they have a bunch of these kids just start to insult you for a few seconds. The reason I called the fight rigged is because the vulnerable LDs in this game are supposed to turn another color. The Snatcher even calling out that we're probably waiting for him to turn blue, where he says that he's not going to, which makes him invincible. That is, until using the attacks he's sending our way to force him to be blue and use that to win the battle. He plays weak for a minute, talking about how disrespectful we are, again back to the mustache girl thing, and when we don't get off their back simply because they're acting weak, they yell at us to have a seat. With one last contract, we get our soul back and are effectively exiled due to our extreme refusal of them. Though given we've beaten all of their other contracts, we don't really have to listen to this one either, as we beat them at their own game once again. And so, with the Snatcher defeated, we have Chapter 4 on our hands. With Chapter 4, it's pretty clear cut that it's about expanding out of living with your family and actually experiencing the great wide world on a more independent level. Not just in the fact that this area is a massive sandbox where you can go and do whatever you want, but also on a more literal scale, as the bells are massive, the stairs are massive, the way to and from each area, and even the people themselves are all behemoths much larger than you. As you make it through the levels, the large goats here will pay you little mind as they walk, shoving you out of the way if you get too close. As you blow the horns to each area, you pave the way to more areas, the birdhouse, the windmill, the highly religious Twilight Bell. But the main focus of the chapter is the final section with the flowers. Now the flowers are what stumped me the most for a while. As you explore and complete each sub-level, you will see a cutscene where these flowers will spread into the Goatmen, though they're seemingly referred to as the illness. I couldn't exactly tie it into the themes from before, so I was pretty confused for a while, but I think that the illness and the flowers are most likely a representation of mortality. This is probably the most shaky one, as it's a vague enough part of the game that you can argue a lot of things while having evidence for and against it, but I'm pretty confident that's death specifically due to a few things. See, with the level the illness has spread, as you get older you start to see mortality more and more. Not just amongst yourself, such as the passing of your own family members, but in the passing of friends as family members, co-workers, pets, even people outside of yourself, which you would see through news reportings of murders, accidents, and other things. The more of life you see and the more people you are aware of, the more likely you are to see it be extinguished, and the more likely you are to see it in every face you meet, spreading into your every thought the older you get. There's also the use of flowers specifically, flowers which are often used in funerals. Said flowers also have a bulb-like structure that looks identical to a vase. Vases of flowers often being given to those grieving a loved one, or in some cultures placed on the desk of coworkers or students who recently passed. There's also the chance that it could have something to do with pollution, specifically due to the fact that when you destroy the last plant, the characters talk about how the air is clean again, and the goat people have come to their senses, which could kind of line up due to older people generally voting against greener options, though that only really makes sense for these lines specifically. More likely it could be referencing literal illness, but the only real thing I couldn't tie in is why the goatmen become infected and possessed by these flowers and then recover later. The closest thing I could think of is negativity, cynicism, and just general nihilism at the idea that they are older and thus seeing more death than others, but that feels like a pretty big stretch. I'll leave it to the comments to theorize what I couldn't. Oh, and before anyone says that it's based on the pandemic virus, YouTube won't let me say, this game was released before that happened. So yeah, I think just the flowers being mortality is a pretty decent way of seeing it. And so we reach the finale. By this point, Hat Kid has faced her inner demons, her doubts with her career, and has by all means made the jump to officially becoming her own person and a healthy adult. But there still remains some past trauma that she needs closure on. Mustache Girl. The thing she is being reminded of over and over again. Mustache Girl by this point has stolen Hat Kid's timepieces so she could use them for herself, so she alone can cast judgment onto anyone whom she deems a bad guy, sitting on a throne identically to that of the Mafia boss from the start. At this point, Mustache Girl has gone full circle, repeating the trauma she experienced onto everyone around her in hopes she can somehow get closure for herself. And of course, obviously not everybody here is innocent. Many of them are ones who hurt her, and some of them chose to hurt others and should be punished for it. But then there's the ones that didn't, that are just as innocent as she was and just want to go home as much as she did. But Mustache Girl has forced everyone to undergo her prying eye, covering the rest of the world in burning hot magma and forcing them to stay even if they were her to some extent. And then there's us. Unlike her, we've done everything we can to avoid stewing in the past, to avoid bottling up and forcing ourselves to live with that trauma, and ensure that we can be the better person we wanted to be despite it all. And Hat Kid trudges right through those doors, all the time she had to run away, all the time she had to bottle it up, all the time she had to hide behind another face, or freeze up, or go back to a better time is over. She has reached the precipice. And then there's her.
Oh, it's you. You've been kinda a selfish little pest, but you haven't actually stood in my way. You get to go on. You're a good guy, I guess. Go on! You get to live!
You get to live. So she admits it. Even if she doesn't realize it yet, she's become worse than the Mafia boss with whom her trauma came from. Because the Mafia boss never killed her. And so we say no.
Excuse me! Don't you dare get anywhere near me. I don't think you quite understand who's in charge, little missy. You know, I was willing to forgive you. I once thought we were gonna be best buds. But nope, you turned out to be rotten and selfish. Save the planet from bad guys? Psh, who needs that, am I right? Look at all I've done without you. I've restored justice. I am the justice. No more bad guys, ever. I don't need you. This planet doesn't need you. Nobody will miss you, and nobody will care.
We battle Mustache Girl. It doesn't take long for her to be beaten, and for every demon we've triumphed to join us, telling her that she is in the wrong here, but that's not enough. If it was, she would have never stolen it from us the first time. Creating a stronger arena for herself, she uses the timepieces to give herself an unfair edge. Though the bosses we've fought and the friends we've made each do their part in helping us edge back, destroying themselves to give us healing. And this is when the mask starts to slip.
What is this? If everyone disappears but me, then I'd be all alone. Bad guys, Stop it!
We don't need a hero. Get lost.
We don't need a hero. Because it's possible to overcome it all, both on your own and with help. Because to overcome it at all, it requires, at least in some essence, a part of yourself. For most people, there is no situation where someone will just swoop in and make whatever hurt you had in the past instantly go away, and the pain with it. You need to build inner strength to have the capacity to move on. And it's here that Mustache Girl finally comes to a realization, and so do we. Because the only true difference between Hat Kid and Mustache Girl is that Hat Kid is an example of someone who struggled against themselves to overcome their trauma and overcome the growing pains of becoming an adult to ensure they become a mentally healthy, good person who is willing and capable of working on themselves for others. Whereas Mustache Girl internalized all of the terrible things that happened to them, and when the time came, when they didn't have the backing of childhood and struggled further to enter the real world, they refused to change, remaining mentally stuck where they were right at the beginning. A scared, angry little girl only having the power to claw others back down to where she is so she isn't alone. Forcing others to suffer like she did by her own hand because she doesn't know how to fix it, because she doesn't want to look inside of herself to see how badly it's broken out of fear it's not salvageable. And so we reach the final cutscene. Hat Kid back on their ship, all their timepieces intact, everyone right back to where they were, to which we are given a choice. Throw one timepiece back down for Mustache Girl when she wakes up so that she can still have something to fight back against the evils in her life, knowing she might abuse that power again, and knowing we might not be able to return home due to being one short, or to keep it so we can ensure we can go home. No matter what you pick though, we get one last scene, where the characters try one last time to get you to stay. They're representing traumas trying to claw you back into pain one last time. The Mafia doesn't want to change, the Snatcher wants to make you do something for him, the Birds want to make another movie with them, and what does Hat Kid do? She brushes them off, sits back down, and with a deep breath, heads home. There's one last thing I need to talk about here. One last thing that was right at the start of the game, and that wouldn't have actually made any sense to talk about until right now. Hat Kid's goal this entire game is to go home. In fact, it's one of the first lines of dialogue we hear. Home.
You are only 5 light years away from your destination, home.
Now, home can mean a lot of different things to people. When you think of home, it's not just your house. It's a place where you belong, a place where you can unabashedly be yourself and be happy. And I think pretty much everyone's life goal is to find their way home in that sense. And the only real way to do that is to experience the world and to move past it. To take the horrible balls of regret, to take the failed or simply yet to be accomplished dreams, to take the proddings of societal demands and the terrible things we hear about day after day, and still, by some miracle, find our way home. And the only real way to do that is sometimes to face it head on, sometimes to think on it, or maybe just stew in bed for a while and rejuvenate, like some of you are probably doing while watching this video. And depending on your current situation, it may take time. A lot of time. It may not even seem possible to right now. In some cases, it just straight up isn't. But the fact that you're even existing right now, listening to this video, that's all you really need right now to exist. So long as you are living for you, or attempting to, at some point, live for you, and are willing to grow and improve, someday you will make it home.